your role is to design the future. Yeah. And to make sure that the future fits to what we as human beings expect it to be.
Welcome to the CSO Impact Podcast, where we talk to leaders in sustainability. We're discussing how we can work in a way that makes a positive impact on the planet. I'm your host, Harald Neidhardt, and in this episode, we talk to Melanie Kubin-Hardewig, Vice President of Group Corporate Responsibility at Deutsche Telekom, and one of the authors in our book, Leadership for Sustainable Futures. I'm so glad to see you here today, Melanie. How are you today?
I'm fine, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Obviously, as one of the authors, it's our honor to have you on the podcast. Now, let me start to talk a little bit about your role as a VP Group Corporate Responsibility. And maybe you can share a little bit about what are the projects you're working on right now?
Yeah, happy to do so. You know that the Deutsche Telekom is a telecom operator, globally working. So we're covering more than 50 countries. So quite a wide geographical spread. And the key things that we're doing at the moment is definitely looking into how can we enforce our climate engagement. We've set ourselves a good target the year ago, a new science-based target, becoming climate neutral by 2040, and a lot of interim steps. So what we're doing at the moment with the countries is working out the detailed transition plan and how do we really get there. Second thing also comes from the environmental pillar for me is circularity. We've given ourselves also here an ambition a few years ago, becoming fully circular on devices and technology. And we have to find out that it's not as easy as we thought. So at the moment, we're really revisiting the target and we're trying to find out what are other levers instead of just taking phones back. So how can we work better with the partners in our environment? How can we change the way we look at the business model? So a lot of really in-depth discussions, because we know that it's obviously not so easy to get there. And then I also do own the social side of things of ESG or corporate responsibility. So we're looking in social engagement a lot into the current political development and what happens in our societies. And we're driving different initiatives on how do we engage better with customers in the society on their behavior on the internet, because we feel a responsibility for that one. And we, by the way, just launched a new campaign this morning while we recorded this podcast on disinformation, which is a huge thing that really worries us on how do we treat that and how do we educate people better on that topic. And then there are a lot of the things that might keep the other CSOs up at the moment as well. The upcoming reporting directive, regulation, rolling out the governance. So a busy agenda, I have to say.
Super interesting. And how did you land actually in this role? What has been your journey to where you are right now?
Yeah, I'm not an educated CSR expert. As you might know, a lot of people who are in that role at the moment come from very diverse backgrounds, and so do I. So I really started working in a corporation as a lawyer, and I was doing contract and IT law. And I had the first sort of very tiny access to environmental topics, because it was at that time a lot about how do you build certain locations, what are environmental impacts. So it already played from the legal point of view a little role. But I then moved from the legal pretty soon into a commercial area, into finance, specifically into procurement, because I felt I wanted to have some broader field of responsibility, not just one contract, one thing, overseeing a broader role. And in that role, I was sticking to IT. I'm a big tech fan, I have to say, though I have no technical background, and was doing this for a number of years in different locations, different countries. And in my last role in procurement, when I was leading the strategy, I was also responsible for the supply chain part and for the responsible supply chain part. So what role does sustainability play with our suppliers, and how do we bring this into our processes? And this sort of catched me. And when I then thought about what I'm going to do next, I decided why not go completely into the sphere where I can create things, where a lot of things still need to be done, where it's about designing our future, and it's such a motivating and inspiring field to be in. And luckily, there was an open position, so I applied for it. And just 2 years ago, I was then taking over the whole team I initially started in the environmental part and finance part, and now I'm overseeing the whole corporate responsibility team. And this is the way how I got there.
Amazing. I think that's really a good sign for following your passion and the world is evolving and challenges arise, opportunities arise at the same time. So I'm glad to hear that the right people move to the right directions. And exactly as you say, there's not a lot of people who actually are, let's say, studying this or have studied this. I think I heard the number less than 5,000 people in universities now in sustainability, and obviously we need much more. Now, in your different, in your journey with the company, what is maybe one of the projects that you're mostly proud of, or what is an achievement that you look back on, which is something you can share?
Yeah, I think every role had its sort of project and successes, and I'm proud of a lot of general strategy things that I've done. I've always been working on these extra projects through my whole professional life so far. But if I need to mention and focus really on one, I would pick something really, I think, from the recent years, because, I started that role, even if it was just a part at the beginning. I started that role because I felt also that we need to turn it from an externally oriented role into something that takes all the employees with us. Yeah. Because when I started, we were having great targets. There was a lot of focus on working with partners, but no one within DT knew what we were doing. Yeah. We designed a pathway. How do we get the company itself on board? Because otherwise the team will have its limits in being successful. And this is something we designed the last years. And by now we have a really big network across the group. We have a lot of engagement also on the management level. We have even company targets, which are specifically broken down into different parts of the company, coming from the environmental and the social area, even going into remuneration. And I think this sort of bundling of how much did we manage to integrate it into DT? This is something I'm really proud of, because I think this is the future where we should go.
And obviously you got some awards to show for that, your journey has been, and the company's initiatives into the green future has been recognized. I think what you just said is interesting because it shows a little bit that, we're dealing with futures in your job or the products you're dealing with phones. Every year there's a new edition and new cameras and new, AI now and all these tech things. So almost every fall or, Barcelona Mobile World Congress, new phones emerge. Then on the other hand, you have this goal, which is sort of in 2030, 2040, as you say. So there's sort of a long timeline. And on the other hand, you have sort of a yearly beat and quarterly things. Is that something that's hard to manage, or it's a very peculiar situation, I think, for where you are?
Definitely. You're really bringing it to the point. For me, it's not a challenge at all. I can play different worlds. That's what I like. That is what is inspiring for me, positive, on the positive side. But I know that when I talk to my colleagues, the way they think ahead is different. And businesses typically tick in cycles of 3 to 5 years. And sustainability looks at the long term and the meta trends. So we're talking about 20 years ahead. Yeah, no one has a concrete forecast. So yes, a lot of the discussions have to do with, can we dare to set targets for the future? How can we also live when we start an action plan, not knowing what will exactly be the outcome in 5 or 7 years, but still dare to go and start? So yes, we constantly have these discussions because we have to manage these expectations. And specifically, I think it's a lot about uncertainties. Yeah. CSR is an uncertain field to be in. You have to make your freedom with that and be happy and just maneuver through it. And that's what we have to discuss quite frequently.
Yeah, very good. So what would you say is maybe one of the biggest challenges in your career so far?
I'm not sure if it's the one big challenge. I think what I always found in bigger projects when it was about designing something completely new, sorting out really a big issue, a big problem probably, is that you have different types of people you have to work with. Yeah. And there are always people who don't want to change anything. And sometimes when this comes together with being the decision maker in a topic. That takes a long breath. You have to have a long breath. You have to have a lot of talks and find out how can you motivate someone to change if there is not a big will to change or if there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think these are always the biggest hurdles that I need to overcome. Sometimes, yes, it's also about budgets, but also the budget prioritization comes with a certain expectation and view behind. Yeah, it's also based on certain emotions and feelings towards a topic. And that was always the tricky part in a number of projects, to overcome that point, because then if you're done with that, you really can get going. You really can develop speed.
I think that totally strikes a chord, because we always say that we're looking at the human side, and that's why we're looking at the CSO role, not necessarily what companies are doing, but what are people like you doing. And you more or less echo it when you say this is maybe something about culture, something about the human. So if they're engaged, they can go. But if, sometimes it takes a little while to get them going. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, definitely. And it's a question of, as I said, uncertainty plays a major role, and also missing knowledge. Yeah. CSR is such a broad field. It's not just narrowed down. It cannot be explained with 3 sentences, and to get people on the same level and create that common understanding and that common mutual feeling. I want to change something. This is, I think, the biggest role that we have, beside all the factual, functional things. But this is the key part of our role.
Perfect segue into the next question about the role of the CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer. You are corporate responsibility, which is maybe a different term and a similar role. Now, how do you see the role of the CSO emerge or develop in the next 5 years? How would you describe what's ahead for you and your colleagues?
I think at the moment, there is a bit of a flux in that whole situation, driven by the current development outside the corporations in our own geographies where we're located, but also around us. There is a lot of development that goes for sustainability or even against sustainability. So I think it's a bit difficult to forecast what that role might be. I think the key thing for us will be to handle that time we're in at the moment, to handle that level of volatility and still to keep going with the topics. Yeah. So a lot for me is about integrating it into the corporation. Still today, I think often it's too much depending on a person or a small team and the motivation of that singular person. That's not enough. If you really want to integrate it consistently, you need to create it as a basic common function in a corporation or in a company. And you also need to get all the other functions around you motivated and working with you on that topic. And that integration work, beside all the environmental and the social hiccups that we can see around us in different societies and geographies, that is what the CSOs within the next years will have to do.
Somebody said the CSO could also be called the Chief Sustainability Orchestrator, and that communication is a big topic, exactly as you just said. Having all the different stakeholders engaged. What are maybe, from your point of view, some of the characteristics of the role that makes this exciting to work in this role, with giving all these challenges and the friction and the outside world and the new policies, and every year something new from the EU, and let's say America is behind and they soften some of the law, and so there's, as you say, geopolitics, outside factors, you have the inside. So what makes it so exciting in this difficult field?
I think the CSO role has some really core beauties. And if your personality fits to that, that's a great match. And these beauties are, for example, the broadness of the role. Yeah. When you look into environment, there are a lot of science-based themes that you look at. So it's access to data, it's understanding what drives our nature. At the same time, when you go into other fields like sustainable supply chain, it's also a lot about processes. So how do you get a corporation going? How do you implement things? How do you manage and measure things? And on the third side, when you look into social, it's about understanding people. And it's also about understanding your own colleagues and the decision makers and the employees who are a basis for all the work that is done. So it's a great mixture. You can't be good at everything at the same time, but it's more about liking and really appreciating that play field, that playground that you have, that variety of things that you have. And don't forget, another beauty is really your role is to design the future. Yeah. And to make sure that the future fits to what we as human beings expect it to be. And this also is a very, I think, a very motivating part of that role. Yeah. And yes, you have to be a good communicator. You have to understand how you also manage and measure things. Yeah. Because in the end, it's a role like a lot of other roles. Yeah. You also have to prove your performance. So a lot of, I think, managerial things come together in that role, together with these, two really, I think, positive sides of the complexity on one side, but on the other side also on the right to design and be creative and change things.
So fascinating to hear you and see also this, let's say what resonates with me is that you're balancing some of the, let's say, for example, there's a new policy that you have to bring into the company. But I guess there's also maybe initiatives or people coming to knock on your door and say, hey, we heard about this. Can we do this? Or here's an idea. Why are we not doing it? Is there some kind of back and forth with external, internal stakeholders or people who are passionate and outside your team already?
Oh, definitely. Within the corporation, we do have certain employee resource groups, how they are called today, ERGs. We also have some on the green topics, on the social topics. So really an active crowd of people who want to engage and who always like to go the extra mile. So that's really great. You don't have to motivate them to do things. They're there. They're just waiting for the right to do things and change topics and change also then the corporation you're working with. And it's the same on the world outside. There are a lot of associations and networks and many people that I've met the last years who are really engaged about also collaborating together on the things, because I believe there's one thing that unites us when you're coming from that field. We all know that none of us alone or even in a team will solve these problems. We really need to work together. Yeah, we really need to jointly think ahead and leave competition a little bit outside. Yeah, always in the light of what is legally allowed. But this is a field where we're really asked to do things together across the industries, across businesses, with political institutions. So, and this is a very great situation. It's more, I think the challenge is more that you cannot always fulfill all these expectations, and things don't always go as quickly as people want them to go. The more people are motivated, the easier they are probably disappointed when things don't go as quick, or sometimes things don't turn into a real product or a real solution. So being the motivation partner is also very important.
Yeah. Now, as you say, your background is law, and then you went into environment and supply chain and these areas where you are right now. So people come from different backgrounds to the CSO role. And if you look at people who are now looking at, maybe this is something for me, this could be, maybe a future where they come either from within corporations and move to the environmental role, or the sustainability and responsibility roles, or they're from outside or just finishing studies. What do you think is maybe a good, let's say, what's important what they should keep in mind if they look at the future of this role, of how they could develop their career maybe in it?
I think having a diverse background is great. Yeah, because the role unites so many different diverse perspectives that you will definitely benefit from it. Yeah, whether you're coming from finance or environment or science, technology, law, communication, it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure you will make use of most of the things that you've learned in the past. What is important is that I think for yourself, that you sort of familiarize yourself with the type of work day that you will be having, this always looking into the future, always having more things than you can answer, not having all the data despite you might need things, but still being asked to make decisions on a more uncertain basis and keeping the others going and running. If you like that sort of mixture of activities, then this is a great place to be. And I think you can try out this mixture in different projects and experiences before, on leading complex projects, on going into a strategy role, for example, for a certain time to understand how our strategy is set up, going into finance to understand how really hardcore measurement and finance planning works. So, this is probably the tip that I would give to people who say, I could imagine being this one day.
What is maybe something that you say, you know what, don't expect this, or there's maybe, what would you, a little warning sign if people are maybe, let's say, having a too romantic idea about this role? What is sort of a little hint you can share?
Definitely. I mean, if you're working for a corporation, you always have to keep in mind, this is a company which is driven by financial performance. This is not an NGO. That means not all decisions will just be based on environmental, social, or other ESG related aspects. It might just be traded off for the sake of financial performance. And you will not all get all the people going. We know that also this view on the world very often goes hand in hand with a certain political view, and you will have people who don't share your view simply. We still have people who say climate change is not existing, and at least it's not human-made. You have to live with that. So resilience overall, if you want to bring it on one term, I think resilience really matters. And you have to be creative and a little bit opportunistic to still find your way. Even if one door is closed, there might be the window next door which might open up, and then you just need to walk through. Grab the chances that are coming towards you.
Very well. And you mentioned some of these, let's say, challenges spreading in your global empire, or the breadth of the group must be so new always, because you maybe deal with some, I don't know, a location where you'd have water biodiversity issues, then some others where you deal with, here's a new antenna, but there's maybe, I don't know, citizens have certain, let's say, so that's maybe a cultural thing. Is technology always good or not? And then you have very strong partners on the supply chain who have their views on what products will look like. I just wanted to circle back to what you said in the beginning, that your initiative on, for example, circularity. So if you take this just as an example, and maybe the one product initiative that you launched today. So with all of this, sea of white water around you, so just putting one project through with a flag, magenta, obviously. Can you maybe share a proud moment, or just now, where you say, you know what, this thing is really something which is important to you? And maybe, for example, about circularity, I think that's a big topic, and definitely not something we can change in the next quarter, but on the agenda. So how would you approach this? Maybe you can dig a little bit deeper on these.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the circularity one, by the way, is a really good one, because and this is also a typical moment, we had to find out that the initial plans will not work out. And then you have to say, okay, it will not work out. We now have to replan. I can probably share a little bit of that sort of, at the moment, not with the super positive result story, but, on the circularity topic, we initially thought that specifically taking back devices will help us to get to this 100% fully circular. This will not work. We have to find out that people will not hand in all their devices. We tried out many things on the market, giving rewards for handing back, putting it into contracts and so on. And we see that there is a certain ceiling of like 50, 60%. And above that, it's more or less impossible. So because the market simply does not react back to us. That's a fact at the moment. And we have no solution on the table how to turn it around. So what we did, because we don't want to move away from this overall commitment that we want to become fully circular, at least enable full circularity on these areas, is we now went broader into other technology domains, into other processes, back into waste management, into the design of products, which we initially left a little bit out because we're not manufacturing any products. So we're rethinking at the moment the complete system. And that means workshop after workshop with our technology experts, with the product experts, with legal experts on certain topics, to find out where can we be successful, and then convince them to come to a newer system. I think we have a great innovative idea on the table, how we can set this up, how we can share the ambitions externally. It's not ready for communication, but now we're in this alignment phase, and it's a constant forth and back. Yeah, you have one department who says, okay, I'm convinced, I'm going to follow. And then the other one adjacent to it says, oh no, I think we can't do it. Right. So you have to go back. So this takes time. Yeah. We initially planned with like 6 months setting up the project. We're now in month 8, and I think we'll take another 6 months, because we just have to be realistic. And that's what you have to do in that role. Yeah. Not giving up. We know we need the solution. Everyone is also committed to the ultimate target. I sometimes have to remind us why we're doing the project and remind my colleagues. And then the next sort of step is taken. But this is the typical work, and I hope that sometime beginning of next year we're ready to release a new circularity score, a new circularity model that we want to apply in our company, that where we also want to share with partners and also industry peers on what we're going to do with that. But yeah, that's reality, you know.
Yeah. I know my reality. I still have my first iPhone. I still have a Newton from, I don't know, whenever I got it in Boston, 96 or something.
Yeah.
And a couple of other phones. And
hand it back, please, to us
exactly,
or to others.
It is human factor, isn't it? That you say, if I hand it back, I get $10. But for me, it's worse. In a way, if you look at it, but if it's in your drawer, it's nothing worse at all.
It's nothing worse. Yeah, I know.
Okay, I will do better. And we already recycle in the family, obviously. So there's that part.
Good to
hear. So human factor, you call it the market, but it's like stupid people like me. And there's maybe a emotional factor, because there are some photos and you never really know how to, when you have the new phone, and now everything is easier, I guess. But that's, again, just underlying how inspiring your work is. Now, maybe if there's one last chance to mention an initiative that made great impact and that you're proud of, what would that be? What is something last that you could highlight?
I think what I'm really proud of is that we managed to get our new climate targets through the board. That was last year. That was really a tough discussion, because we had so many targets, and we are coming again and again and saying we need to be better, and that we finally got it through last year, and it also got a science-based target stamp, because it's a real ambitious goal. And I know in our industry, in telco, people are moving on, but I know in other industries it's not yet so much the case. And it is a challenge. We're well aware of the challenges that we have with that one. Still, everyone signed up to it. And I personally felt this as a great moment, that the company is really behind the topics.
The last question in closing: if you had one magic wand and you could think about one thing or something that could change overnight for your company, for the sector, for the world, what would that be? So here's some pixie dust, and you can now...
Yes.
Your wish is granted.
I exactly know what I would do. And it might sound a bit, I'm not sure if it sounds modest, because it's not the super wish that suddenly the world is super great. I would wish for a certain behavior change at everyone. I still do see, and also my past roles do see, too many people who say, oh, this will not work because, no, we never did it. So I think we can't do it, without even opening up and considering what would it mean for us or for everyone individually to get it going, to make it work. I think if that type of behavior is the way, and people would initially openly react to the topics and think about the solution, less of the problem, then I think a lot of things, not just in corporate responsibility, would be so much better. And I would love to have so much more of that.
Thank you so much, Melanie. So inspiring. And thank you for your time to be here with us at the CSO Impact podcast. If you'd like to hear more about Melanie's story, please read her fantastic essay in the book, but also follow her work at Deutsche Telekom. And thank you all for listening and watching. And thank you, Melanie, for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too.